Hi, my name is Dr. Gayle Bentley. I'm the founder and director of Ivygate Preschool for Gifted Learning. And today I'd like to talk about how we can provide more enrichment for our bright preschoolers. A little bit about my background. I have been a pre-K through 12 teacher in the public school system for 26 years. I am the mother of three gifted and profoundly gifted sons who you can see in that picture from a long time ago. They are now ages 20, 17, and 14. In fact, my oldest son went to college when he was 13 years old, graduated with a master's in software engineering at 18, and now works at a startup in Palo Alto. I do have my doctorate in gifted and twice exceptional education because you would need that if you had three children that you needed to help along this path, like I did. I'm president of Supporting the Emotional Needs of the Gifted. The website, sanggifted.org, is right there. And we have lots of articles and resources and support groups that you, as parents of gifted children, may find interesting. And then I most recently joined the board of the Orange County Association for the Association of Young Children. And I'm really excited about this because now I'm going to really get a handle on what preschools look like in Orange County and what resources are available, and then maybe add some of my knowledge about gifted education. I also have written a book for parents of young children called Using Picture Books to Help Little Ones Learn About Themselves. It's available on Amazon. And then, of course, the Ivy Gate Preschool for Gifted Learning will be opening in the fall, and it's located in Laguna Woods. So, at these young ages, at preschool age, we are not advocating that you go and get an IQ test from a psychologist. In fact, that really isn't recommended until maybe age 6.5. And even then, if you have a particular reason to do it. They will do it if they believe a child has a disability they're trying to diagnose. They will do that earlier for that reason. But if you're just noticing your child's very advanced, you don't need that at this age. What we can do is recognize these gifted traits in preschoolers: an insatiable curiosity and a strong desire to learn. And they do ask why a lot, and I know most preschoolers do, but sometimes these questions are even more in depth. So they'll ask why, and they'll either remember a very complex reason and appear to understand it, or they're the ones who will be asking things much more deeply and not be satisfied with a superficial answer from you. Some of these children have an early interest in letters and numbers. Two of my children were very interested. By 2 years old, they seemed to know their letters and numbers. They knew the sound, the phonic sounds. But my third one, not so much. So it really depends on the child. They can have an unusually good memory. I mean, they remember things that happened 6 months ago, which was, a sixth of their life. And you just can't believe that they can remember that they met this person or they went to this place, but they remember every detail. Or they can demonstrate a really high level of concentration for something they're interested in. So that doesn't mean they have a high concentration level for everything. But like this little girl in the picture, if they love counting things and they love, playing with something like this, like an abacus, maybe they can do that for 20 or 30 minutes. And you would not expect that from a typical 2 or 3 year old. Again, some early abstract and creative thinking. You may be building something together and they're able to come up with a really creative solution to be able to get that tower to be built even higher. Some things that you may not even have thought of that these little guys can think of. You may also see heightened emotional intensity, and that means if other children are happy or excited about going to Disneyland, your child may be over the top excited. I mean, way what appears to be way beyond. They may also, what may bother another child a little bit, maybe really bothers your child, and now we have a meltdown. So there are things and ways to work with these children, and I've been versed in those techniques. And so we will focus on that at Ivy Gate. You also may see some sensitivities. They may not like certain textures in their food. They may just not like certain tastes. They could have a strong reaction to loud noises. I know my father and I have that. If they're unexpected loud noises, I can handle normal loud noises, but if they come up behind me, that's a big thing. I go right into fight or flight. Certain smells, bright lights. We often hear about the schools having those kind of fluorescent lights, and those really bother some people. In fact, maybe they bother you. Some people can actually see the flickering of the lights that the rest of us can't see. And then I have worked with groups of parents who say that they have seen perfectionistic tendencies in their children as early as 2 years old. And again, there are things that we can do to help that situation so that they can grow into accepting and less anxious children. So, very important to think about. These are some things that I did with my children and I've done with other people's children. And that is using common things in unusual and interesting ways. Really bright children enjoy novelty, and they enjoy things that are kind of unusual, kind of funny, kind of quirky sometimes. I have the picture of the blocks there because I remember with my oldest son at a very young age, preschool age, we were spelling things on the carpet with these blocks, and we'd be spelling them kind of like a crossword, so linking up the words by the common letter. And he just loved to do that. And then we went even further, and you can see their numbers on these blocks. I had the ones with numbers, and they even had plus and minus and equals. And I got to a point, I was putting 5 plus X equals 6. And my son would actually be able to pick out that the 1 should go in the place of the X. That's pre-algebra. That's late elementary school math. And yet my son and I are sitting there doing this with baby blocks because he had younger siblings. So, you can do things like that. Placemats. I would buy learning placemats. At first, it was just accidental. We just happened to have a placemat of the states of the United States. And I'd put that in front of one of my sons, and he would memorize all the states. And then he would memorize all the capitals. And again, this is before elementary school. So then I bought him one that was countries of the world. And he learned, there's that countries of the world song that you may be familiar with. So he learned the song, but he also memorized the shapes of a lot of the countries. Puzzles. Another one of my sons was incredibly good at puzzles. And so we had those wooden, they were wooden, I think from Lakeshore Learning puzzles, and they really were too easy for him at this point. So I remember dumping 5 puzzles out on the floor, mixing up all the pieces, and these were all transportation puzzles. So the colors were the same, the shapes were similar, and he would just pick them out one by one and put them where they went on the appropriate board. And he did all 5 puzzles that way. So I was trying to challenge him. I don't know how much I did, but they're just fun things that you can do with that. And then I remember with another one of my sons, I have been a music teacher for 23 years. And so my children are very musical and have been exposed to music since birth. And so we would be at a playground and you'd have that clear bubble, that the children can look through and see on the outside. And I would tap tunes on that bubble. So for Jingle Bells, you might hear, hopefully you could hear that, but I just went tap, 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 tap. And he would guess the tune and he'd be able to, oh, Jingle Bells, And so we would just play little music games like that, or, name that tune and I'd give him a couple notes, something like that. So I used what I had. I didn't buy a bunch of fancy equipment, but I had these children who learned in really interesting and advanced ways. So that's one strategy. Another one is really watch your child and find out what interests your child has and let that be your guide. It shouldn't just be A, what you're interested in, B, what you think your child should be interested in. It should be what they actually are showing an interest in. So I'm just giving you an example here of space. You've got a child, a preschooler who's very interested in space. Well, watch a Nova special together. Just because the child's 3, I would pre-watch it. I always pre-watch things to make sure there's nothing scary. But a really advanced preschooler can get something out of that. And you'd be surprised. You would just think, oh, a 3-year-old would never be interested in that. But, my children were, and they learned facts and they remembered them later. You could check out some advanced picture books about space. They're picture books, but there's a lot of words on them. A preschooler typically wouldn't be able to read them, but you can read it to them. So now they're getting the advanced concepts, even though it's not a book that, even a kindergartner or a first grader would probably read. But they're getting this advanced information and they're getting these really cool pictures. So children often enjoy that. Find someone with a nice telescope. We have a 5-foot telescope, and my husband It's really good about operating it. And, we can see the rings of Saturn. We can see the spot on Jupiter. I mean, it's pretty neat. And then there are other places, you can go out into the desert and somebody will show you things in the stars. Little kids can be interested in those sorts of things, particularly if they're into space. Obviously, go to a science museum with a planetarium. Make the planets, use different size balls at home. I mean, you could either do this on a kind of a small level with Play-Doh and, create the solar system in your living room. Or you can go outside and get, you've got a golf ball, a tennis ball, a basketball, a baseball, and so you're using these different sizes based on how big the planets are. I mean, there are some 4-year-olds, certainly as they're getting to kindergarten, who'd be very interested in setting up the solar system outside. You could use chalk and draw the rings. You could even talk about scale when you're saying that, certain planet, that Mars is significantly smaller than Jupiter, and you would demonstrate it in that way. So the last thing that I thought about was putting together a floor-sized puzzle and talking about the characteristics of each planet as these things go. So I see it as parents of these type of children. I see it as our job to serve as talent scouts. So we're watching to see what our children are interested in, and then we are helping provide opportunities. We don't want to limit our child's learning based on their age. Some of these guys and girls can learn really pretty advanced concepts that you would not expect. You always want to make it fun. You always want to make sure it's age appropriate. And then you want to watch and make sure your child is engaging with you and the material. I mean, they sometimes will just get up and walk away. Well, then that wasn't appropriate. They weren't interested in the Nova Special. But if they're sitting next to you asking questions, or later they're asking questions about what they saw, then maybe that was appropriate. Bright children can listen to and understand more advanced stories before they can read them independently. So you could be reading a chapter book to a young child if they're showing advanced comprehension, if it's on something they're interested in. I actually thought my husband was a little bit crazy, but he actually was reading Lord of the Rings to my oldest when he was 3. And I remember asking the preschool teacher, is that common? That seems pretty unusual. And I think she was just as baffled as I was. Apparently, and I don't read those type of books, but apparently my son could keep up with the characters and what was going on, and my husband could cut out whatever wasn't appropriate as he went along. Always remember, though, we're not pushing the children, we're providing opportunities, and those are two different things. I did not push my child to go to college at 13. I provided him that opportunity, and he got in there himself by taking the SATs at 11 and by demonstrating his knowledge and taking interviews. So this is not about pushing. And if you do push too much, your relationship with your child may suffer. So we always want to remember that our relationship with our child is always key, no matter what age they are. So I did want to tell you just a little bit about Ivygate. This is a brand new preschool. We are providing gifted learning. It's based on the 4 gifted tenets of novelty, acceleration, depth, and complexity. There will be monthly big ideas in gifted language that would be universal themes, but I'm calling them big ideas, such as changes over time and building our world. So we have some pretty big concepts each month. I do have a PhD biologist creating our STEM-based activities, and she's using the K2 Next Gen Science standards. We also will have traditional subjects, but it will all be really seamlessly embedded using those monthly themes, using those big ideas. I've been a music teacher for 23 years, so I will be providing Kodai-based music lessons, which is singing, movement. I integrate things like rhyming, storytelling. I have all sorts of props like scarves and classroom instruments. And then I also have taught orchestra for a number of years. And so I will provide an introduction to the violin for these little guys. I have little tiny 16th size violins. So that will be really exciting. If you are a part of the Ivygate preschool, your child will be working and playing with children who are similar to them. My oldest son did not really meet anybody who learned in a similar way to him until he was really 12 years old applying for that college program. This will be an opportunity for your child to do that now in a carefully tailored environment. The parents will be a part of the community. We'll have monthly gatherings where we talk about any issues that come up. We might talk about where to go for kindergarten, those sorts of things. And then we will provide a portfolio at the end of each year, as well as a strength-based assessment on your child so that you can take that information to their kindergarten. And last, the upcoming events with me and with Ivy Gate is we do have another open house coming on Sunday, July 26th from 2 to 4 p.m. Anybody is welcome to come. It's free. It would be great if you would register at ivy-gate.com. And then I do have another webinar coming up, how to nurture social emotional growth in your bright preschooler, which is a very important topic for bright children. Thursday, July 16th at 8 p.m. on Zoom. It again is free. If you register at ivy-gate.com, I will make sure you get a recording if you can't make it. So if you have questions, email me, director@ivy-gate.com, and I'm happy to set up a free tour anytime. I'm pretty flexible. So we'll get that going, and then I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you at Ivy Gate.